Welcome back to the Dean Seddon podcast, and it's yours truly, Dean Seddon. So, if you're watching me today, I wanted to talk to you about social selling and how it's evolved and what you need to know about how it's changed. But before we get into that, if you're enjoying this podcast, I got a whole load of new guests coming up, and we're going to be launching a load of new episodes soon. So, please do subscribe wherever you listen or watch, and keep your eyes out for some really interesting podcast episodes I've been doing with some people in television in different industries. That's going to be awesome. But let's get into what I want to talk about today. Social selling has changed. I remember I got into social selling before it was a word, before it was even officially a thing. So I remember when I started social selling, it was just called social media marketing. But now that's a whole different ball game. But my backstory is I came from Facebook. So, 10 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that, 10 years ago, you would find me on Facebook. And LinkedIn really wasn't a thing like it is today. And so it's really interesting for me to see the evolution of LinkedIn and the similarities with the evolution of Facebook as a social media platform, but also as a social selling platform. But social selling's changed, and I'll tell you why. Maybe 5, 6 years ago, there was a feature on LinkedIn where you could download your connections, and when you downloaded your connections, you had their email address at the same time. And this is pre-GDPR and all that stuff. And it was a common thing that you would basically go to LinkedIn, download your connections, download their email address, and just send them an email. And literally, I'd do this every couple of weeks, and I would just ask them for a coffee. I basically grouped my connections by location. So anybody in London kind of area. And I'd say, I'm coming to London in the next couple of days. It'd be great to connect with some of my connections. And would you believe, pre-GDPR, that worked brilliantly. It was amazing. And we'd just do that every month or so, different area, different group of people. And it worked absolutely. It was fantastic. But of course, GDPR comes in. And then we end up in a situation where, okay, you can't do that anymore. And then, of course, you have this evolution of the messaging and the ease of being able to automate messaging. And so, and I'll tell you, no word of a lie, I could send the same 150 messages, the same message to 150 people and get about 30, 40 responses. Obviously, this is like, 5 years ago or whatever. And the easy wins from social selling are kind of done. The easy wins are done. And so we see these gimmicks, and every new little tech thing on the block, we try it out. We've tried out the kind of clever where it puts a Loom video together. If you're not familiar with Loom, it allows you to record your screen and you doing a video at the same time. There's clever little tech where you can have a custom video and a standard, your headshot talking, so it looks like it's personalized, but it's not. And all of these different tools have come out to try and get around the fact that volume does not work anymore. And everybody's in denial about this. We're in denial that the volume game doesn't work because we want it to work. We want it to work. Let's face it, we've had 5 years of automation that has allowed us to talk to more people than we could physically talk to. And it's allowed us the opportunity to send things to people that would take us a lot of time. But in that period, we've never asked the question is, but should we? But should we? Now, I'm alluding to the point here that the machine gun approach to social selling is not necessarily, well, it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And as much as we think and hope and believe it will work, it doesn't. Now, of course, I'm going to say something kind of a little bit against what I've just said. If you're selling $50 or $100 or $500 things, it might be an option. If your market is large, like huge, yeah, like there's tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of potential customers, and your price point is low, it's probably worth your while to actually approach it from a more mass market kind of way. In fact, I'd go one step further and probably say that if you've got a mass market offering, and if the price point is low, you're probably better with ads. You're probably better with ads because the effort employed is just crazy. But we've seen this change in social selling from basically all the easy stuff has been nailed, done, dusted, and is over. So people say, well, what's coming next? What's the next evolution? And, AI and conversational, you could have a robot that pummels people with messages, but it's AI, so it's clever. Maybe you can. But what happens when we get wise to that? What happens when we get wise to that? And this is the problem. When a new way of doing something comes out, there's always this space where you can create a lot of opportunity if you're first at it or an early adopter. And social selling's coming out of its early adoption phase now. So all of the major gains, the easy gains have been had. All the easy tactics have been nailed and they are over and done with. We're now into kind of the second phase of it where it's a little bit tougher and it's a little bit more strategic. If you think about Bitcoin, right? And I've played with it, but I'm not obsessed with it. Don't really follow anything about it. But when Bitcoin came out, the people who made the most money were the people who saw it go from $0 to $25,000. That's where most of the money was made. The people where Bitcoin has floated around between that 25 and 40,000 and wherever it's been, until I don't follow it that often, they're the people where they're taking more risk trying to adopt that same strategy. Because the gains have been made. The easy gains have been made. And this happens in every sphere of life. When something new happens, the people who are the early adopters make the major gains. And then the mass comes along and they find it more difficult to make those same gains. It's just life. It's just life. And social selling is no different. So that machine gun approach, its effectiveness is now really difficult to make it work. Now, how do people justify continuing to do it even though its success rate is so poor? Well, it's quite simple. If you're pummeling people with pitches and you get one bite and that one bite turns to £25,000 worth of business, it seems to justify itself because for a little effort, I've made 25,000. And I've met companies who've freely accepted this point. This is the strategy they're working with. They freely accept it, freely know that that's what they're doing. And what it comes down to in the end is they've played the numbers, and then those numbers get more and more difficult to find. So I'll give you an example of a company I was chatting to a couple of years ago. They have sent about 15 million cold outreaches to different people. So 15 million, they've reached out to 15 million different people. 15 million with a very cold mass market approach, selling $3,500 to £50,000 services. So some of you would question, why are they selling such high value stuff in such a mass market way? That was their way to scale. So they did all that, 15 million. They got horrendous reviews and things online because they just absolutely hammered it. And, to some degree, they were growing, they were making money. So who cares, right? Their online reputation was trashed, but the money was, they were making money. The problem comes is once they've reached that point where they've done all of that stuff, they're now scraping the bottom of the barrel, or they have to sustain that growth, they have to get smarter. So they approached me about going onto LinkedIn, and I said to them, if you go onto LinkedIn with that approach, you will struggle. Your accounts will get restricted. You will miss out on opportunities. Anyway, they ignored me. And what they did is they went exactly onto LinkedIn with the Pummel with Pitches approach. Because it's a different channel, they thought, well, we've done the email we've done the email thing. Why don't we just go for it on LinkedIn? Well, their problem was they started pitching the same people. So they didn't filter their data correctly. They didn't plan it out properly. And so they had basically people pitching the same person. Some people were getting 2 pitches in the same day. So a lousy strategy that's then made worse by lousy execution. And so basically they went, LinkedIn doesn't work. I was like, I'm glad you've come to that conclusion, because I would hate to see the long-term damage you would do to the platform. Because all of our pitches, me deciding to pummel people with pitches, you deciding to pummel with people with pitches, basically ruins the response rate for everybody. And this is what we are seeing right now in the iteration of social selling. We're seeing that it's more difficult to engage people because we are all used to getting pummeled with pitches. We are used to seeing that connection request and it going, I bet you any money they pitch me as soon as I connect. Or the more aggressive version, you connect and then they dial you up on your mobile. We've seen this. We know this happens. And so when somebody tries to do something differently, when somebody tries to actually do something more relevant, they feel the consequences of all of that pummeling that we've done. I say we've done, but you get my point here. That has happened for the last 5 years. All the easy wins have been taken out the market. And in fact, because everybody's been so greedy and aggressive and lazy, it's now harder for us all. It's true, right? You look at it. All those pitches, somebody firing out 150 sales pitches messages a day. If you have a number of those people hitting your prospects, you've got to stand out in amongst all of that. You've got to somehow differentiate yourself through all of that. So let me give you some thoughts about how things are changing and how you can be competitive in a social selling environment despite all of the things that are going on. So the first thing I want to say is, right, first off, we should never forget that when we're talking to prospects on LinkedIn, when we're approaching prospects on LinkedIn, they are people. It might be a profile, but they're human beings with emotions, with feelings, with mood swings, with diaries, with all the stuff going on. They are not just sat behind their desk thinking what's the best interests of the business right now. And this is the bit that a lot of people struggle with, is that they get frustrated of, we've got something really valuable, we know it can add something to their business, but they just don't give us the time of day. We know that we can save them money. We know we can do X, Y, or Z, and they just won't give us the time of day. That's because it's a human being. That's because that human being has other pressures, their own career interests, their own personal biases, blah, blah. All of that's going on. This bag of water that you see as the key to a purchase order is actually a person. And so when we think of it, and this is sales 101, but we easily forget it because technology gets in the way, and we get more and more remote from the fact that humans are feeling creatures, is our decision maker. We've got to build some kind of connection with that decision maker, because without it, they're not going to listen to us. You could have the most amazing presentation in the world, but if they don't like you, if they're not engaged with you, they're not going to listen. So we've got to remember that these are human beings. And, one of the things I say to people a lot in the workshops and the trainings I do is say, look, if you're going to cold call people, if you're going to cold email people, at least break the ice first. At least break the ice. That will improve things even a slither. And this is what we don't get, right? This is what we don't get. So if you prospect one-to-one, like literally one-to-one, and I've got some members of my team who do this every day, one-to-one prospecting. There's no automation involved. There's no standard pitches. It's personalized messaging. It's personalized outreach. And if you go cold with it, and we've done all the tests here, so everything I say, we've tested. We don't just kind of make it up as we go along. If I approach a one-to-one prospecting method where I actually invest the time in the prospects, my success rate in booking meetings is about 17%. 17%. Cold outreach, on average, has a 0.6%. So, of course, stats vary person to person, and everybody's unique and all that kind of stuff. And every prospect is unique and every industry is unique. But one-to-one prospecting, hands down, beats automation. Hands down. So we look at it and go, yeah, but I don't have the time. Well, if you can't make the time, well, think about it. One-to-one prospecting. Let's think about automation. How much time do you spend setting up the software, writing all these emails, editing all these emails, doing all that stuff for let's be generous, a 1% conversion? Or could you get the same result from prospecting 10% of the number of prospects? So let's say I said 100. Let's say 100. Yeah. Let's say 100 prospects I have to do through automation. It takes me time to write all those emails, time to write all those messages, set up the system, press go, and I get one. So that's an efficiency game, because in one sense, if that works, there's the if that works, you have a money printing machine. If that works. In other words, you could just put another 100 in, another 100 in, another 100 in, another 100 in, and pull out a prospect at the end. It's a sausage factory money printing machine. But let's be real. It doesn't, does it? It doesn't work. It doesn't work. You might get one person out that money printing machine, but then the next time you do it, you get nothing. And then you think, oh, should I change it? So you change it, and then you go, oh, I got two this time. So you run it again with another 100, and this time you get nothing. It's unpredictable. It's unpredictable. If I go and start to one-to-one prospect people, I can do it with almost a sixth less prospects than the automation. So if I need 100, right, 100 prospects go through my automation machine to get one. If I go one-to-one and use the personal touch, which has more high impact, and prospects can see I've done the work, I could do it with a sixth of the prospects and get the same result. So when we think about scalability of what we're trying to do, that scalability works in two ways. Scalability is turning up the noise. In other words, just doing more, building a machine and just flying stuff through it. And that's one way to scale. But the other way is to actually scale with personal. And that gives you more prospects that you'll convert by going personal. So if we compare it, automation 1 in 100, and let's be generous. Let's be conservative with one-to-one prospecting. Let's say 7%. I'll get 7 times the revenue or the results from 1%, one-to-one prospecting, 7 times the results than if I do automation. And this is what we've forgotten. And what it is it's a short-term thirst for results, frying our brain on long-term gains. If I burn through my prospect list for ease, let's be honest, for ease, I actually cut off at least 6 out of the deals I could do. So when we forget that our prospects are human beings, or when we lose sight of that, we start to template. And there's nothing wrong with frameworks and templates, as long as they don't become like a substitute for human tweaks. So we can smell templates. We can smell when we've been robo-pitched. We know it. We can feel it. We pick up on it. There's something about the language that is different. And you see this a lot in outreach. We can see when something's been automated and robo-personalized, where we can see a difference when somebody's actually talking to us. So the more personal we go, the more effective our results are. And then I would add, and some salespeople and sales leaders will be on a grump with me here, going, we don't have time to do this. Well, what are your salespeople doing? What are they doing? I do wonder, given, right, if you think about it, we are employing people to sell, but then we're robo-pitching. So in other words, all their interactions with prospects are being taken away because we're using email automation and what have you. So what are they doing? Have we crippled them with administrative tasks that makes them no time to do anything? Are we so obsessed with tracking their every effort that it actually consumes so much of their time that they can't do it? Worse still, and this is common in technology businesses, have we employed salespeople who do not understand the value proposition, and we've made no effort to understand the value proposition or personalize that value proposition to a prospect's business? Tough questions here, right? I did some work with a technology company just recently, and they had a team of 20-something salespeople, all eager, ready to do their job, wanting to hit their tasks. I couldn't fault them. But when I was sat there talking with one of them, and I said, right, your SaaS solution, we're going to approach this prospect. Can you tell me how this will help them? What's going to be the benefits in their business? And you know what? Despite all that earnestness, all that passion, they couldn't. They could not tell me. They could not personalize it beyond the little prepped cards, which, they could improve their efficiency in their e-commerce operations. Okay, fine. What does that mean? What does that mean? Tell me what that means. They couldn't. They could not tell me what that meant. This is the problem. We are spending so much time training salespeople in tools, but not helping them apply that information into a real life situation. So let's say this SaaS software can help them improve the efficiency of their e-commerce operations. How exactly? How? What will it do? Oh, well, actually, it will cross-check databases so you get less errors in address deliveries. Okay, great. What else will it do? Tell me how it's going to help me. And this person, lovely guy, really passionate, great on the phone, but did not have the ability to quickly understand, this is their business, this is our value prop, How can I translate that? It couldn't deviate from the card, didn't know how to deviate from the little cards that they had on their desk to say, this is how it relates to e-commerce. So basically what we had is we turned our salespeople, and I asked permission before I could share this. We've turned our salespeople into robots too. Scary, isn't it? We turned our salespeople into robots. When the nature of sales, the nature of social selling is to connect with a human being, to build rapport with a human being, to take that conversation to another place outside of the social platform. A salesperson's job is to connect with a human being and open up opportunity. But what we've done, where we are, is no, the robots are going to try and connect with human beings. And then when we see that human being might be interested, then we'll put the effort in. Then we'll make an effort. So we'll treat them like robots until they show interest, and then we'll get personal. It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And I know this is unpopular. I know this is not a popular message with AI, and I'm not against AI. I use AI in my day-to-day, but it helps me be better. It helps me be a better human. It doesn't make me into a robot. And this is what we've missed. This is the bit that we're missing, the missing piece of the puzzle. So social selling has definitely evolved. And I've said this before. So engaging with prospects on LinkedIn, if you're a cold caller, if you're a cold emailer, knock yourself out. Go for it. But social selling, even if you choose, do you know what? I don't want to do social selling. I'll just say, by the way, it is a different mentality. Social selling to any other form of kind of sales, it is a different mentality. It's quieter, it's calmer, it's more, there's not as much vibe back, in the sense of if you're dialing, you're talking to people. There's a pace, there's an energy, there's a vibe. If you're a sales manager and you're seeing all these phones going and people chatting, even if they're getting no, there is a vibe it gives off that feels good. And social selling, you got a room full of people sat on their computer all quiet. Doesn't feel the same. It doesn't feel the same. But if you are doing that, if you are doing cold calling, if you are doing cold email, think of LinkedIn and social selling as antifreeze. It disarms people. It brings people. It relaxes people. It helps seed things so that, and I've said this many times, so that when you send that cold email, they recognize your name in the inbox. They recognize your name. Everybody is obsessed with the subject line. Why are you not obsessed with the name? Be obsessed with the name. Think about your LinkedIn and go, okay, my LinkedIn mission is just to be obsessed with the name. What do I mean? I mean, if people recognize your name in their inbox, they're going to open the email. Instead of trying to play that subject line game where it's like, I'll come up with a quirky subject line, which everybody uses. Quick question, Dean. I'm sick of having that one. Quick question, Dean. Oh my God. I get that one every day because somewhere on the internet, somebody said, if you use this subject line, it will break through, right? Unfortunately, hundreds of thousands of people are going, quick question, Dean. And so it loses its effectiveness. But you can't beat human nature. You can't beat human nature. People respond to people they recognize, people are familiar with. That's universal. That's never going away. AI will not change that. Automation will not change that. So make yourself famous in their world. Get some name recognition. Use LinkedIn to get name recognition before you call, before you outreach. And like I said, not immediately after you connect, because that's really annoying. So engagement is antifreeze. In other words, however you can engage with a prospect, and most LinkedIn trainers get this totally wrong, by the way, totally wrong. They say engage with your prospect's content. And I stupidly, many years ago, would tell people this too. But 97.5% of LinkedIn users don't post, right? 97.5% of them don't post, right? So the people who are giving you this advice don't have real world experience, right? They don't have real world experience. You have to engage them in the inbox. And that's not about sending pitches. That's not about just being quirky in the inbox. You got to learn the skills to strike up conversations with people in the inbox. Now, it's different if you've met them offline and then you come online. It's a different game altogether. But if you're trying to cold engage people on LinkedIn, you've got to warm them up. You've got to break the ice. You've got to get to know them. You've got to engage them in idle conversation, in random conversation, insightful conversation. Break the ice. And most people don't get this. They go, I'll just cut to the chase. And I'm too polite to say it, but I should say it. They usually go along the lines of, my prospects prefer people. They're serious people. They're senior decision makers. They haven't got time for this ice-breaking stuff. They want people to cut to the chase. Oh, right, okay. Is that what they want, or is that what you want? Because most of the time, the people saying this to me are people who don't want to put the effort into prospects. So often what I see is people project their opinion onto prospects. It's really funny is salespeople don't mind being cold called. Salespeople don't mind cold outreach. They say, I don't have a problem with it. Of course they don't, because they're doing it, right? Sometimes we project what we feel onto our prospects, and they are completely different people in completely different worlds. So if you are going to outreach, if you are going to cold do it, I personally don't do that much cold. I'll try and research and warm up and all that stuff first. But if you are going to do it, why not use LinkedIn just to prime them up, break the ice, warm the prospect up a little bit, build a bit of name recognition so that when you outreach, when you call, you're going to get much more success. But social selling has changed. And that whole pummel people with pitches is over. It's just a new landscape. And you're more successful by going very personal and showing your prospects that you've done the work.